Hello and thank you for attending my PowerPoint presentation about follow-up attacks. Like, imagine waiting for your turn. Basically, I'm pretty sure any attack that isn't a basic skill or ult is a follow-up attack. Though I could be wrong, there might be a few exceptions here and there. Although if you're unsure whether something is, if it is a follow-up, it will always be specified in-game. There are a lot of different follow-up attacks. There are currently 17 characters that have follow-up attacks in the game without Eidolons, plus 3 more when you do count Eidolons. Follow-up attacks tend to be either single target or AoE, with only one blast or one bounce follow-up. Follow-ups tend to be a pretty great archetype in all game modes, since being able to attack more is really good. I mean, that's the main reason why speed is so important. Follow-ups can also be incorporated into many different kinds of kits, which makes them one of the most versatile and cool mechanics in the game, from a design standpoint. I'll be going by path, so starting with Destruction, there are 4, which are Clara, Blade, Yunli, and Xueyi. The first 3 have follow-ups as more of a counter mechanism, triggering when hit or when, in the case of Blade, 5 instances of taking damage. I'll go more into counters in its own PowerPoints. But in the meantime, Xueyi has a follow-up based on dealing toughness, which deals good damage and a bit of toughness chip. Well, technically Team Xue is an Erudition, but she plays more like a Destruction, so I'll talk about her a bit. Her E4 gives a huge follow-up attack. Like, you don't want to build her entire team around that follow-up, but it is a pretty significant chunk of extra damage. For the hunt, there are 5 characters with follow-ups, plus much 7th with E2s, for a total of 6. Yanqing has a follow-up that doesn't really do much, it just does a bit of chip damage and freezes. Topaz's entire kit revolves around follow-ups. Her basic and skill both count as follow-ups, Nami's turns contribute a large portion of your damage, and Nami's action is also advanced with ally follow-up attacks. She also leans into more of a supportive role with her follow-up vulnerability with Proof of Depth, especially if you have E1 or S1. Ratio has a huge emphasis on follow-ups, which have a higher fixed chance of occurring depending on the number of debuffs on the target of his skill. This isn't that explicit in his kit, but if you look at his damage profile, I believe about 70% of his damage is from his follow-ups. His ult can also launch the same follow-ups. Fei Xiao has a follow-up that triggers whenever another ally hits an enemy, which is also triggered after her own skill. Her ult also counts as a follow-up, which charges up with ally attacks instead of energy. This is also really beneficial in follow-up teams. Even if it's not doing that much damage, it's going to be generating more charges for Fei Xiao. Huozi has a follow-up that triggers every 3 ally attacks on top of some follow-up vulnerability himself. Basically, you can think of him as Topaz on a budget. March 7th follow-up is pretty insignificant in terms of damage and toughness, but it can be used with Fei Xiao as a Shifu to immediately trigger Fei Xiao's follow-up again. So basically, Fei Xiao can use her skill, launch the follow-up as the effect of her skill, which triggers March's follow-up, which then triggers Fei Xiao's follow-up, which is 4 consecutive attacks, which is 2 Flying Aura stacks. There are currently 4 Erudition characters with follow-ups, plus the aforementioned E4 Team Xue, but that doesn't really matter. These are all conditional AoE attacks, at least the first 3, that synergize with each other beautifully. Herda's follow-up triggers for every enemy that reaches below half health. Himiko's follow-up triggers for every 3 enemies broken or 1 elite broken. Jade's follow-up triggers whenever she reaches 7 charges, which are gained for every target that her or her designated debt collector hits. So basically, in Pure Fiction, generally if you're looking for a follow-up team, you just mix and match 2 of these 3, depending on the weaknesses of the enemy, with a dual DPS buffer, ideally Robin, and go ham. Meanwhile, Jin Yuan's follow-up comes in the form of Lightning Lord, which is the summon that takes forever to act and deals a ton of damage. I've heard rumors that Sunday will probably make this viable, so yeah, that's something to look forward to in 2.7. In terms of preservation and abundance, there are 2 preservation characters and 1 abundance that do follow-ups. Ice March 7 does a follow-up whenever a shielded ally is hit. this really doesn't do like anything. It does attack scaling damage when she's a defense scaling character. That's partly of why Ice March 7th is not a good character. Meanwhile, Avengerine's follow-up does actually substantial chip damage and gives shields, which are triggered at 7 stacks of Blind Bet. Blind Bet is gained with each shielded ally that's hit, plus 1 more bonus if Avengerine's the one that is getting hit. Li Sha's follow-ups come in the form of Fu Yuan. It does good damage, good toughness damage, shields, and cleanses, which is really nice. Okay, for Harmony, technically Bronya's E4 does a follow-up, but that's very insignificant and not many people have E4 anyway. Robin does an additional damage instance during Concerto, which is not a follow-up attack. Additional damage is not a follow-up, but it does synergize very well with them. Robin's whole kit, I believe, was made to synergize beautifully with follow-up teams because they were pushing the Robin, Ratio, Avengerine, Topaz archetype, which then replaced Ratio with Fei Xiao when she came out. Because her kit revolves around constant ally attacks to give her energy to get her into Concerto with her ult, and then do more additional damage while she's in Concerto. Because like I said, more follow-ups means more attacks, which means more additional damage instances. Right, summons are basically an additional unit that has its own speed and action value. All summons count as follow-up attacks. There is reason to believe that summons will get pushed in the near future. The biggest, most concrete and legal one is the Banana Amusement Park planar set, which means that summon stonks may go up soon. I mean, as a Jingyuan owner since day one, I mean, good for me. Well, there are currently 3 summons, which are Jingyuan's Lightning Lord, Nami, and Fu Yuan. Nami and Fu Yuan are great, but Lightning Lord, right now at least, is not. The biggest problem is that it takes forever to act. Base 90 speed, plus 10 for each hit without any straight up action advance is so slow. Like, at maximum it can reach 160 speed, but then like, it's not always gonna be running at 160 speed. And with the way dynamic speed updates work, it ends up being just really slow. And if Jingyuan gets CC'd right before Lightning Lord attacks, he has to wait an entire new cycle. That's so slow. If there was a way to action advance it, like the interplays from Swarm Disaster and Golden Gears, it would probably be really good, since the damage multipliers are actually not bad. Follow-ups are the focus of the Elation path in Simulator and Divergent universes, which happen to be one of the strongest and most satisfying paths in Simulator and Divergent universes. Also, if you've been paying attention, I did not mention Kafka because that one doesn't really matter. The best follow-up teams tend to have like multiple follow-up attackers which fulfill the conditions of each other. Like Herta Himiko, where Herta weakness breaks for Himiko to follow up, which brings the enemy to low health for Herta to finish them off, and so on. And like Herta Himiko for Jade, like hitting all the targets many times to get Jade more charge stacks to hit the enemy more, you know? Fei Xiao or Ratio plus Topaz, like Fei Xiao and Ratio have follow-up attacks that trigger right after their skill, which can advance Nami, and Topaz also gives follow-up vulnerability and whatnot. And then like, if you're more budget, like Fei Xiao and March 7th, I already explained March 7th, and Mozi, that too. And then this is also then buffed by a dual DPS Harmony, ideally Robin, but characters like Rame or even Asta, if you're really that broke, works too. Like, either one of the 3 eruditions are usually mixed and matched based on the enemy weakness, and Topaz tends to be the best sub DPS for a single target, mostly due to that follow-up vulnerability that not only offers pretty decent personal damage, but also pretty big damage amplification. Also, there's also the Big Herta, whose kit hasn't been officially revealed yet, but I'd say there's a pretty decent chance of using follow-up since it's Herta, right? The Big Herta as well as Herta are the only 2 Ice Erudition characters, so I'm going to bet they're going to be pretty similar. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. If you did, do like and subscribe. I doubt I'll standardize the format for every single one of these miscellaneous PowerPoints, so I get to do whatever I want. Anyway, like I said, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and you can check out my other content if you're interested. Alright, bye!